Hi guys, it's me Pikato here, and before we start with this very sad video, I just want to let you guys know that thanks to everyone on TikTok for voting for this video, and by the way, just to let you know, this is my official OC. If anyone is wondering, this is what my official OC is going to permanently look like. But thanks to everyone on TikTok for voting for the Gacha My Life series instead of a new actual series without voice acting. I have decided I'm going to do this on one condition: that whatever you guys hear about my life from this video, you guys just don't torment me about it, because I've heard it all, honestly. My life kind of sucks. But without any further ado, let's start this video. Like everyone else's life, it starts when your mum and dad falls in love. Unfortunately, when that happened, my mum was 16 years old and my dad just turned 30. But they moved in together, and later on during the relationship, when my mum turned 19, well, just before, like 10 days before my mum turned 19, so my mum was about 18, they had me. I was a beautiful baby girl. I was premature by 2 months. I was meant to be born in March, but instead in January to the 20th, 2004, they had me. And later on, it followed with them having my baby brother Nathan. And we lived a happy life. We had a mum, we had a dad, we have the brother and sister. It was a happy family. We couldn't have asked for more. I just turned 1 at the time as well. But a month after my first birthday, my little brother Nathan died. No one knows what happened to him. All we know is 1 second he was breathing and the next he just wasn't. No one knew what happened to him. Not even my mum or dad could have stopped this, and it was a really rough time for everyone. I just turned 1, so I didn't understand what was going on, but my mum and dad were heartbroken. It didn't help that just after my brother's death, my dad kicked my mum out of the house and said he needed some alone time. They were still dating at the time, but he just didn't want to live with her anymore because it was just really upsetting him. So she moved into a different house with me, and we thought everything was going to be fine. The only issue with our life now was because of my brother's death, and because everyone on the street heard about the death, my mum was getting constantly harassed in the streets and had people coming up to us blaming her for my brother's death, saying that my mum murdered him when she didn't. She was just as heartbroken as everyone else about my baby brother. It didn't help that my baby brother, like me, was also premature, and my mum got pregnant not long after she had me as well. So my mum wasn't meant to be able to get pregnant. It was kind of really rare for someone to get pregnant at that stage in their life when they had just had a baby. But eventually my dad, he came out of it. My mum wasn't the same. She developed PTSD from what happened to my brother. Not to mention, she got diagnosed for other things like schizophrenia and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It is a very rare disability with her joints and stuff, what results for her to, at one point, be stuck to a wheelchair. She's not in it anymore. She's fine now, but it got that bad. At one point, she couldn't even walk anymore without dislocating her legs. But despite my brother's death and everything that got thrown in my mum's way after my brother died, we still remained and tried to live a happy family. I just learned how to walk when my dad left. he still had contact with me during my childhood, but he didn't want to be with my mum anymore when all we could think of after my brother died was that my mum was terrible, and since then he had been verbally abusing my mum. He was always good to me. He treated me like his child, like he was meant to. But he never treated my mum the same after that. He always, due to its mental health, blamed my mother and just turned on her slowly over time. But despite all this, my mum still provided a roof over my head and sacrificed everything she could to ensure I had a comfy bed and food and everything I needed. She raised me on her own for a few years, and at first I thought it was just going to be me and my mum forever, and she was the best thing in my life until she met my stepdad, Stuart. I was so overjoyed to finally have a dad, even though I knew that I already had one. He became my bestest friend, and he treated me like a little sister, even though he was my dad. He was so kind, and I was just so overjoyed to finally meet someone who I actually felt cared for me and my mum. And we became a happy family again, despite not having the baby brother that we would have had. He sacrificed all his dreams to ensure my mum was safe, and the way they met was so romantic as well. What they told me about how they met was he was friends with my big brother, who my dad had with someone else before he met my mum. And he was 16 when I was born, and this was just before his 18th. He went to the shop one night to go and get food and all that when he got his first place, and he saw my mum and recognised her immediately and realised that she was struggling for money that day and she couldn't afford to get me anything to eat, and I was hungry. So he offered my mum all his money for that week that he was meant to be spending on food for himself. And when my mum found out that's what the money was, like why he had that money, my mum paid him back immediately as soon as she could, and they just started hanging out, and eventually they fell in love. They even got married when I was 3 years old. And it was the best day of my life. I still remember the wedding. It was a night to remember. Everyone was there except for my grandpa. And everyone was just so happy. The room was filled with joy and love, and I even met my cousins, Alyssa, Kobe and Harry, who mean everything to me. They're my bestest friends at the minute. Even though I don't see them that much anymore, they're still my best friends. And time went on. My dad raised me to be a gamer like him. And I just grew up with the love for video games, mostly The Sims. And then it was just so fun. I loved my childhood. We were a happy family. My mum did get pregnant a few times, but she never made it through the pregnancy before some complications happened and either the baby died or got taken away from her before she went into labour. And throughout every move, and no matter how many times we changed, we were still a happy family. We even got 2 cats at one point, named Tiger Lily and Tilly. And I just felt complete. The only thing that I wanted at that moment in time was a little brother. I didn't even care if it was a sister, to be honest. I just wanted some siblings for me to look after and be there for. We just loved each other no matter what as well. And I was so happy until I started high school. And yeah, by the way, my head teacher is actually called Mr. Careless. I'm not even joking. Like, that's what my head teacher at my old school were called. But I started primary school, and I was so scared. I had never been that scared in my whole entire life. I was just worried that people would judge me like they did in primary school because I was different. It was because of a combination of my mental health making me different, and then not to mention the way I was raised. I was raised to respect people no matter what they think, even if what they thought was wrong. I was also raised to be a bit of a crazy person, but that's what my mum and dad loved about me. Too bad no one else liked it at that time. And I was right to be scared, because shortly after I started high school, the other kids started mocking me and hurting me to the point where I was getting jumped every day on the way home. I couldn't even leave my house without seeing somebody there waiting to attack me. And then when they would notice me, they would always chase me. It was the scariest moment of my life, high school. But the one thing that made it better was this guy I met on my first day at school named Nick. He was so handsome at the time, and I'm not gonna lie, I kind of fell in love with him, and he felt the same. Because shortly after we met, we started dating, and because he was older than most of the kids bullying me, he would always tell them to leave me alone, and they would be scared of him. Because he had a reputation at our school with being a bad boy and everything. And I knew I was safe when he was there. And I loved him so much. Until one day I came to school and saw him making out with this girl. I had never seen her before, and at the time, I didn't even know this was happening, because she started school when I was off ill for a month. Because I had this, infection, viral infection, and I weren't allowed in school for a month because I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't stop throwing up. I was pretty much paralysed that whole entire month. And the first thing I find out the moment I go back to school is that he had moved on. And he didn't even bother checking on me when he literally lived next door. He would always walk me to school because we lived that close together. And I became heartbroken. I tried to move on from him, and I dated multiple people, but each one made me sadder than the other, and even got to a point where I weren't even dating them because I loved them. I was just dating them because I didn't want to be alone. And I knew my life could only go downhill. I had my friends like Ellie and Nicole, who you see in some of my other videos about my life that I've done in the past. I had Ellie and Nicole with me through it all, and everyone thought I was happy, but no one knew until one day I told them I was going through depression. I'd become depressed because not only were people at school bullying me, and I was too afraid to go home at night. Every night, because I knew there would be someone waiting outside the school to beat me up, who either didn't like the way I looked, or didn't like the way I acted, or just didn't like me, or just wanted to be popular and thought it was the best way. I don't know what the motives were. No one ever told me. But I eventually opened up to my friends, Ellie and Nicole, and told them that I was depressed. I've never cut myself. I only put that in the picture because it's the most common symptom of depression that I know of. But I showed them my diary one night, and their hearts sank, and they realised everything I had been going through. It didn't help that my home life wasn't exactly great at that time either. My dad was in and out of jail, and my biological dad, who left when I was younger, and on top of all that, his sister, my auntie Diane, was cyberbullying me and telling me that I was too fat, or I was going to die at the age of 16 and I was going to be a junkie and an alcoholic and get diabetes because I love chocolate so much. And I looked up to her. She was my favourite family member. She was my idol. I looked up to her as a future inspiration of what I wanted to be like. And then she just came out of nowhere and did that. And I never understood why. And I went into depression because the one person I loved the most turned on me. It was a really dark time in my life. I even tried telling teachers, but they would always walk away as if nothing were wrong and they wouldn't think twice about it. Until one day, one of the teachers were doing the daily errands, making sure no one was skiving lessons, and saw me hanging, like dangling my legs off the stair banister, about to jump from a 2-floor building. And the thing is, if I had jumped, I would have just landed on the bottom set of stairs, so I would have broken my neck and everything. It would have actually worked, but he eventually spoke me out of it and I got sent home. My mum and dad at first were really disappointed, but after a while they just started sobbing and tried doing whatever they could to try and make me feel better. They even watched movies with me I used to watch back when I was happy, and told everyone on Facebook what had happened and that it was my aunt's fault. And everyone then turned against my aunt when they read the post that my mum had linked in the message she'd put on Facebook, as well as showed pictures of my diary and what I'd written in it about how I was feeling, and she had a go at everyone for it to try and make me feel better. My depression just got too much. It even got to a point where I didn't even care that my dad was in jail. I didn't care that my brother were dead. I didn't care what I was making my mum and dad feel like. I just wanted to be alone. I isolated myself from the people I loved, and the voices in my head just started taking over. I couldn't do it anymore. I eventually got sent to CAMS to do therapy about it, where I revealed stuff not even my mum or any of my friends knew about my depression. Like, for a fact, that year I'd lost 3 friends. One of them died in a car accident. Another one died, killed herself because of me. And the last one died at the Ariana Grande concert during the bomb. I was actually meant to be dead by now, to be honest, because she had bought me tickets to go, but she gave them to her little sister instead, who died with her, because I couldn't afford the train ticket. I couldn't afford the train fare to get to Manchester in the first place. So I should have been there, and I just didn't. I couldn't afford it. And I just never felt so alone. I even told her about my little brother and about how, since I was 5 years old, I had this imaginary friend named Nathan. And at first I thought he was imaginary, but over time he started saying stuff to me like, "Do you remember when I was born?" Or, "Do you remember who I am?" Or, "I'm your little brother." And I just hid it from everyone because I thought I was going crazy, until my therapist at camp said that I wasn't. He was a figment of my imagination, but he was a figment of my imagination, what was there, so I didn't feel so alone anymore. It was my imagination's way of saying, you need to stop this. Eventually, I started seeing the light again and I started being happy. I was still depressed, but I just buried it deep inside and tried focusing on more important things in my life. Like my friends, they were so happy to get the real me back. I can remember their reactions when I came back after being excluded from the school because the school couldn't cope with couldn't afford to keep sending me home every day. And I can remember my mum and dad's reaction the first time I told them I loved them after so long. And after telling them how much I hated them because they never protected me from my aunt. I started being active at the school as well. I was the president of the anime club, where we used to watch stuff like Black Butler and play Pokemon Go, and we'd read tons of manga. It was kind of what made me me right now, the anime club. I met so many beautiful people, and some of them were going through hardship, but instead of going through what I went through, they just turned to manga to make them happy again. I was also president of the science club as well. I was the oldest member of the club, and it was my turn to lead after my friend Connor had left to go college, so I became president of the science club, and I loved it. Like, every year in World Book Day, we would have a Harry Potter themed, like, science club, and Sir would bring in wigs, and we would all dress up as the Weasley twins, because Sir could only find ginger wigs, and it was awesome. I loved it at that club. I even started becoming active in the school productions and school like talent shows. And I wish you guys could have seen me on stage. I loved it. Yeah, my anxiety gave me stage fright, and I would always shake off for at least half the act. But after a while, seeing my mum smiling at me from the audience, I knew that I was just being ridiculous and that I had to go through with this. Everything was great until in fact it was last year this happened. Round about June, July last year, I woke up to my mum and dad arguing. It turns out they'd been arguing for a while, but they didn't want to tell me because I was finally getting over my depression. They divorced. My mum always looked back, but she never had the guts to tell him, and eventually left. She was meant to be going to She went to Scotland. She was meant to be going for a holiday, but because she didn't see the point in coming back anymore, after everything that had happened and the fact that she felt like she weren't welcome back either, she eventually stayed and moved in with her best friend Doug. The day she left, I remember coming downstairs seeing plates and stuff broken on the floor and asking my dad what had happened. He would always try his best to make an excuse like, they got drunk that night, or my favourite excuse of the cat did it. But eventually my dad couldn't hide it from me anymore, and he sat me down and told me everything about how they'd been arguing for a while and how they didn't want to tell me because I was already going through a hard time as it was, and not to mention I was just a kid. I shouldn't have had to deal with that. The only thing I could say was, what's going to happen to the cats? I didn't care about me. My cats were all that mattered to me. It didn't help that I only had Tilly because 2 years before the divorce, Tiger Lily had died. She had a heart attack during bonfire night, and I came home the next day. I woke up the next day to seeing her dead on my dad's bed, and my dad was sobbing. I went to Scotland for a holiday just after my dad told me, just so I could see my mum again, because she thought it was unfair that she had to do this to me. But whilst I was gone, my dad fell into a deep depression, and I don't know the full story because my mum said she didn't want to tell me because I was already going through them divorcing, and she didn't want me to feel any worse about it. But he had been self-harming in some way, I don't know what. And he rang my mum up and said the day I was meant to be going home that I needed to get a refund on my ticket because he didn't want me back. As much as he regretted saying that, he said it was the best thing for me because of what he was going through. And my mum just silently agreed. I can remember her reaction telling me she was absolutely heartbroken. She was sobbing. And all I could say was, "It's okay, Mum, I'm used to it." And I just went back to sleep. Because it was during a holiday, so I didn't have anything else planned other than going home, so I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning to be told that and just went back to sleep. And I didn't wake up until 1 o'clock in the afternoon because I was that heartbroken and I just didn't want to get out of bed. But I moved in with my mum and Doug, and Doug's 2 children. And I loved it, yeah. I did have to keep, like, having sleepovers at my aunt's house and sleepovers at my grandma's house because we only have a bunk bed, and because Doug's got 2 kids, they get a bunk each and I have to sleep on the couch, and they didn't want that for me, so they gave me an option to go to my aunt's house and I chose that option. But life got great. That was actually when I started doing my channel as well, during the divorce. Not long after I had moved, in fact it was 2 days after I found out I was staying in Scotland, I started a YouTube channel. In fact, this channel. And during that exact same day I started the channel, I got a new look. And I started a new school that very same day. Well, I got my uniform that day and signed up that day, but I started school a week later. And at that school, it was terrifying for me, but I met tons of lovely people like Morgan. Yeah, he's a bit of a moron most of the time, but he's still my best friend. I know for a fact that he's just a moron because that's how he treats his friends. Not to mention, I've never seen him do anything else other than being a moron. I met Bobby, yeah, she talks too much and she's a bit of a chatterbox, but in some ways she kind of reminds me of my friends at my old school. Just the enthusiasm and the happiness that all my friends had when I met them. And that's the reason I stick around with her. She just reminds me of everyone I cared about, and slowly I started caring about her the same way I did with them. My lovely potato, Kiralee. She was really shy when I first met her. Also, I've just noticed I forgot to give her glasses. Because her and Zoe have glasses. But when I first met her, she was a bit bashful and shy and we wouldn't talk to each other. But when the teacher sat me on the desk in front of her and Zoe with this girl named Libby, who I'm friends with, but I don't really hang out with her much unless we're talking about anime. Right, because I'm that obsessed, guys. Me and her just sort of hang around now. And then Zoe, the leader of the group, and the most enthusiastic one out of all of us. Her job in our friendship group is to make sure all of us are safe. Yeah, me and Morgan are the oldest by about 3 years, but we didn't care. Zoe is kind of a little demon herself. It's why when I portray her as her persona Spider Girl, she is half wolf, half demon, because everyone at school sees her as a sister to me, because that's all she's ever done, treated me like a big sister, and protected me and had like this sort of cockiness about her when she does. I eventually, not long after I started the school as well, started having feelings for Morgan. And we ended up dating. We loved each other. But one day he realised he loved Zoe more than me, and he was too scared to tell me because he didn't know how I'd react, because we had only known each other for a month at that point. So he didn't know how I'd react, and not to mention we were rushing things. So he left me for her. At first I was upset, and I even told everyone that I hated them, but I never meant it. I'm still friends with them today, to be honest. Shortly after me, like 2 days after me and Morgan split up, out of sadness, because I was sad, I didn't want to be like that. I confessed how I felt for Bobby when I first met her, because sorry about that, my soul's escaping. I slowly started having feelings for Bobby when I first met her as well, and I finally confessed to her, and she said she felt the same way, and that's why she was so protective and chatty to me and clingy. But yet again, that relationship didn't last. We dated a week before I left her, just because of how young she was, and the fact that we weren't even allowed to date because of the age gap according to our school, by the fact that I am like 3 years older than her. It didn't work out, and I had to leave her to protect her. The voices in my head were coming back, and my depression and anger slowly started building up, because all I could think was, why did my life turn this way? I never did anything wrong. But when I thought all was lost, just before Christmas, I confessed to Kira Lee that I liked her, and she confessed that she liked me too. What I wasn't expecting. I generally thought that she loved Zoe, because when I first met them all, she was dating Zoe, but it turns out she liked me from the moment we met, and I just was over the moon, and she's still my girlfriend today. We've been dating since Christmas, and I'm just so overjoyed to have her in my life. We would do all sorts together, and I would do whatever I could to make her laugh, even if what I was doing was absolutely stupid and idiotic. I just lived to see her laugh. And I still keep in touch with my friends from my hometown. And I hope one day to see them again, but it's just really hard with how far away Scotland is from my hometown. And I doubt I'll be able to see them again in person unless they either come and visit me, or when I move out in not that long, like move out of my parents' house and Doug's house and not that long, I save up money to go and buy a ticket to Blackpool to visit them. And things are okay today. I've got my beautiful girlfriend. Yeah, depression's still a major factor in my life, but especially since I lost my dad a couple of days ago, my biological dad. He's not dead, he's still alive, but I had to disown him. He was making threats to my family and threatening to hurt the people I loved. And I just knew it was the right choice, because I couldn't deal with what he was saying. The worst thing is, he was using me as an excuse every single time people were complaining about what he did. He was always saying he did it because he wanted to talk to me, or he did it because he hadn't heard of me. But the reason he didn't was because he never bothered to ring me, and when he did, it was just to ask my mum for something. It was just to attack my mum mostly, to be honest, as well. And he just As much as I know he loves me, he just never seemed like he did. And that's why I disowned him. But I live a happy life now, sort of. I've got my beautiful potato here. And I know in time I'll slowly recover. But as of right now, I'm just going to be the little wolf I am. With my beautiful bunny. Anyway, that was my life story up to date. And I'll see you guys in the next video, what I believe should be Take Me to Church. My Take Me to Church parody animation. So, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.